Hunting Dave, Part 1. I looked down at the paper and then looked up. In front of me was a man named Dave, who had volunteered for the experiment. It was my first time conducting an experiment. After all, the experiments were only conducted by high-ranking employees, which I was now, thanks to my promotion. "Are you feeling all right?" I asked him using the mic. "Yeah, thanks for asking," he said quietly. He seemed nervous. "Is this your first time taking part in an experiment?" "You seem really nervous," I asked him. "Yes, I'm a bit nervous, because they made me sign an agreement before this stating that they won't be responsible in case of injury or death." He replied, "Oh, don't worry about that thing. It's just a formality they have to do before conducting experiments. You'll be fine," I assured him. "Thank you. I feel a little better now," he replied. "Shall we get started with the experiment?" Then I asked. He nodded. I pushed the button on the panel, and one of the walls opened up. A box came out of the wall. "Please take the contents out of the box," I instructed him. Dave opened the box and took a small vial with red liquid and a syringe out of it. "Take the syringe and inject yourself with that liquid," I instructed. He took the syringe and filled it up with the liquid, then proceeded to inject himself with it. "How do you feel?" I asked him. "I don't really feel that good," he replied. Before I could say something else, Dave suddenly started screaming, "Ah! Burns, it burns," he screamed. Dave's skin started melting away. In less than a minute, all his skin melted away, and only flesh could be seen. "My jaw, it hurts," he screamed in agony. His mouth started opening wide open, with teeth all around it. He tried to close it with his arms, but the teeth sliced through his arms like butter. I quickly pressed the emergency button to get reinforcements in. Suddenly, his eyeballs fell to the ground, and a huge hole formed in his chest. I watched as the hole was slowly filled by a red eye forming inside it. Suddenly, a bunch of armed men came rushing in. They quickly grabbed me and started getting me outside. "No, we need to save him," I screamed at them. "The only one we need to save is ourselves from that thing." They screamed back. I watched while getting dragged away. Dave screaming in absolute agony and pain. No. I suddenly woke up completely drenched in sweat. "Seems like I was dreaming." "Nightmare?" asked a familiar voice. I looked and it was Tracy. "Just some bad memories from the past. We were discussing UDA, and then what's going on?" I asked. "Jason poisoned you and drove off with the pen drive?" "That's what," he replied. "Seriously, where is he now?" I asked. "I don't know. Probably with the UNF." He replied, "What are we waiting for?" "Then let's go find him. We need to get that pen drive." I exclaimed, "We have bigger issues at hand right now," Tracy said as he turned on the TV breaking news. "Monster on rampage. People are advised to stay at home and avoid going outside. Seems like we do have a much bigger problem to deal with." Part 2. "So what now?" Daniela asked me. "Well, we have to stop that thing, Dave." "Now," I replied. There's no way I'm fighting that thing." She replied back, "I guess." "Then I will have to," I said as I turned off the TV. "Do you at least have a plan to deal with it?" "Let me at least tell you its weak points," she said to me while getting up, but almost falling to the floor. "Take it easy. You got poisoned." "Not too long ago," I said as I grabbed a chair for her to sit on. She sat on the chair, still being weakened by the poison. "As for the weak points, it's the eye and the chest and head, isn't it?" I asked her. "How did you—" "The egg died by getting stabbed in the eye, and the head is a weak point for most creatures." "It's not that hard to figure out," I interrupted her. "Seems like there's not much I can help with after all, huh?" she said in a gloomy tone. "That's not true. Maybe you can look around the house for a clue to where Jason is. I found a bike in the garage with a few cans of gas. So I'll be using that to get to Dave," I said as I headed for the door. "Aren't you forgetting something?" Daniela said as she grabbed the phone on the table and tossed it towards me. "I already have one. You keep this one. My number's on there, so call me if you find anything," I said as I tossed it back to her. I got on the bike and started riding towards the place where I last saw Dave, using the GPS on my phone. There was a slight nice breeze, the kind you would want while riding a bike. The road was bumpy at times, but it was fun. I was enjoying the ride. After all, who knew what was coming next? 4 hours later, I was about 20 minutes away from the place when I noticed a weird smell, the smell of blood. Suddenly, I was tackled by something. I fell off my bike and hit a tree. I looked up and there it was, Dave. It started walking towards me. It got closer and closer and closer. Then I suddenly realized something was wrong. That thing was about half the size of Dave. Was it perhaps an offspring? But how did it grow so fast? Lots of questions, but no time to think because it's coming right at me. It suddenly dashed at me. I dodged, but it hit my right arm. It was smaller than Dave, but also much faster due to its size. My right arm was bleeding. I held it with my left arm. Then suddenly, the symbols on my left arm started glowing red, and the wound on my right arm was healed. Not in the normal way, the blood had frozen, stopping the bleeding. Then it dashed at me again, but this time I got on my legs and jumped over it. While I'm in the air, I turned my left arm into an axe and cut the creature in half vertically. I defeated the creature, but I had no time to relax. I heard a grrr sound behind me, so I quickly looked back. Seems like Dave wasn't the type to be satisfied by one offspring. Part 3. I saw 3 more of those creatures waiting for me, after I turned around. These ones were the same size as the ones before. I suppose their abilities must be similar as well. I took a few steps back to gain some distance from them, but two of them started getting closer while one waited behind them. I went back until I was out of the road and near the trees. The creatures were looking at me with their eye in the chest, even though their face with crimson hollow eye sockets also faced my direction. Suddenly, one of them screamed, and both of them in the front dashed towards me. I enlarged my arm and grabbed a tree, then swung it as hard as I could and hit two of them. The one standing on the back was out of my range. The two who got hit were now just a pile of red flesh and blood. The last one standing towards the back finally spoke, "Release me. Kill me. Help me." I frozen in shock. This one still had its human conscience, or so I thought. It suddenly smiled and leapt at me. It had gotten my guard down. It was halfway to me in the air when it was hit by a car. The car didn't stop and kept going. I was able to make out a mark that I recognized on it. A red U. Those unified fine pitch threads, guys. Also want to visit Dave, huh? I thought I went to get my motorcycle, but it stopped working. It must be damaged from the attack. Seemed like I had to go on foot. I followed the road for 5 minutes. Then I noticed something on one of the trees. It was an egg, much bigger than the one at the facility. Seems like the outside was somehow accelerating the maturing of the eggs. No wonder so many of these creatures were out there. I turned my left arm into a blade and stabbed the egg's eye. It screamed and then it died. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was my other phone call, which was with Daniela. "Hello," I said as I picked up. "Hey, I found some stuff here that you might want to know about." Daniela replied, "Make it fast. I'm in a hurry right now." I said, "Okay." So I found some chats on Jason's computer. It had a password, so it took a little bit of time, but I managed to get in. It seems Jason was already talking to some guy from the Unified Fine Pitch Threads. Daniela explained, "Spare the details and get to the point." "Already," I interrupted her. "Gosh, okay, they were talking about how you got your powers. It seems they wish to use the same ritual or whatever." "You used to get powerful," Daniela replied. "There does seem to be unified fine pitch threads, guys." After Dave, "Do you think they might be trying to get Dave's powers?" I asked. "Maybe we don't know who from the unified fine pitch threads." It was what dude 7306 doesn't really give much of a hint. Either way, be careful. Daniela replied, "I will." "You too," I replied and hung up. I started following the road again and came across the car with the red U. It was smashed into a tree. They either crashed due to a creature or terrible driving skills. Either way, the car was empty. Seems like they decided to go on foot as well. I started running. I can't let them get to Dave first.